And it's always very exciting to go to a city and I'm able to meet 100 people that represent the entire city, and I can ask questions and I will get a kind of a representative answer from them. So I will see how many of them take drugs, how many take the bicycle to go to work or to school, how many of them would prefer to have a different partner of their life, how many of them have been beaten with a stick as a child, or how many are unemployed. And so it's a very fast way of getting a portrait of the city. So this is the statistical side of it. But obviously what really makes it interesting is then to have people where normally numbers are. To see this particular woman, for instance in Gwangju in South Korea, I was very impressed by a woman who had been one of the, what's the name of it, the people that have been attacked by the women that have been abused by Japanese during the war. So she was very old, so she was one of the last survivors of this generation, and she openly spoke about it on stage. And it's something everybody knows about, that it has happened, but it's a shame, so people wouldn't normally talk about it. And she did and gave it a face. So this was very touching for, I mean, for me, but also for the whole, especially for the whole audience.
So, if I may allow to say that, so documents and the research for you is more like a background, because what I saw, for example, Kressinger, he's very into the documents, the language of those government documents, and then the juxtaposing different kinds of documents. So for you, it's not your direction. You're more interested in from the statistic, we see the people, because for 100% city, you based on the demographics. And is that can I compare that in that way? Or?
Well, I'm very interested in reality, and my medium is theater. And some people believe that theater is a tool for transmitting literature, but that's not that's not at stake for me. I believe that theater is a life form of art, and so the more immediate I can get people close, the more close I can get them to something that I think is really exciting to look at, the more I am happy about the result. And bringing them close through text is a kind of a detour. It can be interesting. I read a lot. I might find text documents that I find very exciting, but it doesn't resolve yet what should the performance be, because reading I can do at home. I don't need to be in the theater. If I want interesting archive materials, I can take them to bed and read them closely. So I like people to discover things on the stage as it is happening in 100%, or I like to tell them, come with me and have a look at this particular view here behind the grades. This is Berlin, and you look at it from a parking lot, and it's a very particular place where in the upper floor, you don't see it in the camera right now, but there's a bar happening. And so these I could write a text about this bar, and it might be an interesting text, but I think it's interesting to be here and to kind of see the contrast between the kind of cheesy little colored lights and the kind of wanting to be organic little urban gardening happening on the rooftop, cohabiting the space with this abandoned parking lot. And I do believe theater is first of all an experience of sharing the room with people that you're interacting with. And when I started working as a journalist, I had these immediate experiences of making interviews in interesting places with people, but then I wasn't happy with the product to text. I felt that I would prefer to bring the people that read these articles to the place and have the immediate experience of meeting this particular person, and so that's what I do with theater.
And I think that when you talk about reality, and when probably remote may not be a very good example of like in your work as a documentary theater, but I think for me when I do remote, it's more like I know the city, but as if like I am in another world, like another realities, and this kind of fiction and reality, it really like it fascinates me, the work, but the reality is not the one that I used to know.
Yeah.
And there are lots of like not manipulation, but editing and fiction inside it as well. But very often documentary theater is talking about like authenticity and truth, and like how do you see that? I'm not saying that it is not okay, but I like because very often in the interview or how they brand you, how they promote, it's about authentic, and like we have a real people on stage, and yeah. For me, it's not interesting question, but like I think it's good to like feedback on it if you.
I mean, first of all, Rimini Protocol is an artistic group, and we also try to not stick to one format and not just be labeled under one thing and then stick to it. We constantly try to expand the notion of what theater could be and also what our work could be. So in a certain way, I would say remote has something to do with my interest for reality, definitely, of bringing people to a place and seeing it immediately. It has, in that sense, if you want, maybe to do with what is my interest in documentary reality and the experience of something that is real, but it's not at all a documentary audio tour in the sense that I would talk about what is happening in the past there. It's not I bring people to places with a remote, but I don't tell them what has happened there before. It's not about the past, it's about the future. So it's, I would say, rather actually an attempt of doing a science fiction, which in theater is hard to do because cinema has much better tools of faking a situation in the future. But we can enhance or encourage you to kind of think about what are the potentials of a particular space. So it's the potential of the horde or the group of audience not being sitting down in the dark and looking at something, but of experiencing themselves of something kind of swarm alike or mass alike, or a group of game players, or even actors, performers in certain moment. All of this happens to you when you're walking on the tour. And there, yes, I do work with text also, but it's a very particular form of text through this computer voice that talks to you, and I try to reflect on something that is happening in our contemporary world the more and more, that is the substitution of responsibility on our own side and shifting or handing over such responsibility to algorithms, to programs that pre-select our perception and that devise us to do certain things more than we devise them maybe to do certain things.
And I see like there are trend that you're using lots of technology now. Like in, for example, we have the remote with the ear, like the ear MP3 like earphone, and then with the radio. Actually, it's a radio emitter coming along with us. And then I also research a bit. The Brooklyn Museum is an algorithm, and also like lots of technology. Do you think it is like your interest coming along to kind of like have like giving us a different sense of reality with using the advancement of the technology?
Well, you're shooting this interview with cameras that are digital cameras. They wouldn't have been there 20 years ago. But is this interview about technology just because you are using this? No, I think the people who will be watching it as they would have watched a film being shot before. So in the end, I think all these tools that are around us, algorithms, smartphones, smartwatches, whatever, they are there. It's not that we're not cutting edge technology developers. We often struggle actually to find programmers that can kind of come up with solutions for our world. But we are surrounded by these tools, so why not using them if necessary? We don't use it for the sake of using them. But what I'm interested in technologies that have been developed in the last 10, 15 years is not that they bring us, there was a time when everybody was dreaming about cyber worlds. They thought Second Life is the place to make performance. But it turned out these purely virtual places, at least for me as a theater maker, they're not interesting because they're kind of completely disconnected from reality. But with the Internet of Things, with the kind of low-tech, high-tech combinations that come along with little tools like the Raspberry Pi or little solutions that people can find on a haptical experienceable level, there is a potential interaction happening with people through those technologies. And in the end, I'm interested in those interactions between the people, which you could probably sort out with very simple things. Situation rooms, for instance, it's a project we did about weapon trafficking, and people, when they experience it, they often say, "Wow, this is expanded reality or augmented reality," and it's actually not. It's technically, from a technical point of view, it's very simple films that have been shot, and they have been simultaneously shot in the same place. And this would have been possible 20 years ago just as well. The cameras would have been a bit bigger and more expensive, and the processing would have been more complicated to make it happen. But I think developing technology is not our job as theater makers, but thinking about what the impact of it is in our society is very much part of what theater makers, as all artists, probably will be busy to do.
And do you have anything to add? I think the last question is more about the audience thing. Yeah.
The audience thing.
Yeah, the audience. It's like lots of involvement of the audience, and I think it is really your, like, what do you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How can we involve the audience?
Yeah. Apart from that, I think
audience, come out of the camera.
Otherwise, this is the last one.
I just want to ask that question. Documentary theater, would you view yourself as documentary theater, or in what kind of relationship you think you're related to documentary theater?
When you first started to use the term documentary, it was because we were making a performance with very old ladies, 80s plus. And they asked us, "What do you want from us?" And we said, "Well, we are theater makers and we are interested in aging and the medical implications of it, but also the social implications of it." And they said, "Theater? Yeah, but how can you make theater with us? What would that be?" And we said, "Well, we would like to work with you on the stage." I said, "Why? What theater, it's with actors," and they just didn't understand. And so at some point we used the word documentary because they could think of documentary films, and so they understood why they themselves would be there and not actors. So it was a tool to explain with simple words instead of, and we like to use simple words. That's why we stick to the word theater as well. Although every now and then people come up and say, well, but this is performance art, or this is, I don't know, installation, or this is, and I don't like those terms. They're just, theater is something very simple. It's about truth or fiction, it's about a role play, it's about dramatization, which are all interesting topics and perception forms for a collective of people that is watching. Much more interesting than the kind of implication that art brings along. If you say art, it seems to have this, I don't know, aura of the sublime.
My last question is the audience. It's very often like your work involves audience, and at least for me, I feel like being included, and my role is very important in the work. To understand, like, enjoy the work. I cannot just sit back and then I have to like walk literally and or to think. And do you see that?
Well, just like in your ordinary life, I guess you're probably quite important to yourself as well.
Yeah.
So.
But like very like unlike like for example the traditional kind of like theater, then I sit back and being fed and how do you see
But
that?
you know, that what is the traditional theater? I mean, when you're talking about that kind of traditional theater where people sit and look into this little hole, then you're talking about theater in the maybe 19th and 18th century, maybe the 17th. But then if you go a little bit further back,
and actually we are included.
I mean, I was just recently in Athens and I saw like the Bacchia, you know, the Dionysus theater, which is a very involving party kind of situation there. And if you go look at the Middle Age, you have all these walk, promenade performances that are not so far away from what we do with remote. So,
kind of like going back, like it's kind of as a cycle.
Yeah, I mean, and maybe not only back, we're also moving further on, but I definitely, I don't think just because there's a whole industry of performance producing performances for the frontal stage, and because there is a whole, you know, theater education based on very particular techniques of acting, that this should define what the theater art is in the next 10, 20, 30 years. It has to keep inventing new forms of live interactions, and there will be probably performances in the future that are chemical. I don't know, that there might be performances where there is I don't know, and then people will come and say, but this is not theater, and then others will explain, but actually, you know, perception always has been chemical in your head, and I don't know. So I think this process will go on of reflection, what is liveness and interaction between people in a staged form, and that's probably what the frame should be of theater.